As you can all see, we are kind of in an emergency situation because we are having a problem with the lights and it is very cold. So please compensate for it by thinking of us with your heart, with the light of your heart.
Allora, questa scuola di cristianesimo avrà un inizio un po' anomalo, perché comincerò con una citazione che apparentemente non c'entra niente, ma siccome...
So tonight I'm going to start with something that might not seem like it's connected, but I recently read it. So allow me to introduce this encounter that I read the other day with a rather particular quotation, which I would then immediately try to contextualize. George Clement Shaw, 1841 to 1920, was a French politician, as well as a doctor and a French academician. He began his political career as mayor of Montmartre in 1870, 3 years before Therese of Lisieux was born. He was twice the Prime Minister and the Minister of War during the First World War, at whose conclusion he was proclaimed Father of Victory. Sometime before dying, considering the population decline, the frivolity and the search for pleasures, which were threatening France, he said this judgment: I do not believe in Christ. I am not even baptized. But I am convinced that the only force that could save France is the evangelical ideal. If all Christians had a drop of the blood of Saint Francis of Assisi, I would believe in the resurrection of our homeland. We are just a few days away before our European elections. And Europe now seems largely de-Christianized. I feel like saying, if all Christians had a drop of blood of St. Therese of the Child Jesus in their veins, I would believe in the resurrection of Europe. And I say this with a touch of affectionate polemic towards some of you, few fortunately, who continue to say that this school of Christianity, based on the vicissitudes of a Carmelite nun, lived in the last century, is not suitable to equip us for dialogue comparison with today's world. Of course, this would be the case if the school of Christianity limited itself to repeating a few episodes of the history of the soul, and if your work, personal and group, was limited to relaunching them with some personal additions. But if instead we work to capture in the episodes the science of love that Pope John Paul II recognized to little Teresa, which he solemnly proclaimed her Doctor of the Church,
dicevano ma non si può proclamare dottore della Chiesa una ragazza di 24 anni che ha scritto un po' di ricordini d'infanzia. E Papa Giovanni Paolo II disse: lei è dottore della Chiesa.
So he proclaimed her the youngest doctor of the Church,
giovane dottore della Chiesa,
in the science of love.
Nella scienza dell'amore. Ecco, se uno capisce questo, allora capisce che tipo di scuola di cristianesimo stiamo facendo. Ripeto, e se succede quel che succede...
So if one understands this, they understand what's happening in our school of Christianity.
Adesso già citava il caso di Lambert, ma tutta la cristianizzazione dell'Europa. E quell'uomo che non era battezzato ha avuto il coraggio di dire: se i francesi avessero una goccia di sangue di San Francesco d'Assisi, e io dico
I say, if we work to put the Christians of today in our veins a few drops of her blood, capable of making us as resurrected, everything is necessary, the political debate, the votes. But we will not come out of this situation unless we begin to guard this drop of blood, at least in those who receive the grace to understand the problem. That said, the School of Christianity continues with the second part of chapter 5 entitled Making the House as Beautiful as a Church.
Rendere la casa bella come una chiesa, e ha due parti. Io l'altra volta un po' ho fatto tutto.
So I kind of did everything together, but however, in the first part, this chapter, Therese tells how she was prepared in the family to receive the sacraments: confession, first communion, confirmation.
La comunione, la cresima, cose elementari. Io non so voi, ma
I don't know about you, but I became a little sad when I asked myself this question. What do I remember from my first communion?
Della mia prima comunione.
My first confession.
Cosa mi ricordo della mia prima
What do I remember from my first confirmation?
Non posso dire nemmeno di ricordarmi la festa, anche perché eravamo abbastanza poveri, non sarà stato tutto.
I only remember that little white robe.
Ricordo solo l'abitino bianco, un bambino vestito tutto di bianco. Ecco, non ricordo altro.
I can't say I even remember the party because we were poor.
Mi hanno dato quel che potevano.
I feel sad for it. Evidently they gave me what they could. But reading what Saint Therese says, for example, she tells the priest, if she can tell him that she loves him since she is talking to Jesus. I think they told Saint Teresa already was living at 10 years old the perception of the Eucharist as marriage, as sponsorship, as marrying herself with Jesus.
C'è la lettera che scriverà un'amica a una compagnuccia con cui ha fatto la prima comunione e le spiegherà che quel suo matrimonio c'era già tutto nella confessione. Oppure leggo la cresima e vedo che dicono le sorelle.
She lives it to the point that in a letter she writes to a friend who is about to marry that her marriage was already everything in the Eucharist. During the confirmation, Teresa's sisters say that there was an impetus at her, the thought that she was about to receive the strength to become Christian, that the Spirit would invade her and take her soul. I don't remember any of this. Do you understand what can happen if, on the other hand, the things that we live in church, especially the most important ones, are engraved in the soul of the children? If I say to Jesus, remember what we said at the exercises, Lord, I did not happen to have this grace, the Lord would answer me, if you want, I can do it now. The second part goes beyond the sacraments and speaks of the family liturgy. The question is this: is there a family liturgy? It should exist. Its lack or its devaluation is the cause of the fact that for children, or even for adults, sometimes liturgy in the church is not so significant because there is a detachment. Family liturgy means the old good habits, the morning prayers, the evening prayers, before and after meals, the blessing. Certain parties lived with a touch of sacredness, and it could also happen in a birthday or particular holidays. If there is no family liturgy necessary,
necessariamente
The children
i ragazzi soprattutto
will take the church as a bore.
hanno la liturgia della Chiesa come no? I ragazzi te lo fanno capire.
They will get tired of it. St. Teresa would have said anything except that she grew tired in the church.
Allora per spiegarvi
To explain what the family liturgy is, I chose to read you a text by Father Duval.
Un altro autore che ebbe una vita molto travagliata e poi da vecchio anche lui scrisse una sua biografia. Forse l'avete già sentito, ma è così bello che potete capire. A casa mia la religione non aveva nessun carattere solenne. Ci limitavamo a
Father Duval, a French Jesuit priest,
preghiere della sera tutti insieme. Però
was
c'era un
born
particolare,
in Val di Algio, Valley of Joy,
questo è uno che ricorda la sua infanzia, una persona
on June 30th, 1918, in a peasant family.
in particolare che terrò in mente finché vivrò. Le orazioni erano intonate da mia sorella e perché per noi bambini
I will read it to you. At home, religion had no solemn character. We simply recited the evening prayers together every day.
mio padre interveniva
But there was a detail that I remember well, and I will keep it in mind as long as I live.
imparai allora che con Dio
The
bisogna
prayers were sung by my sister, and since first children they were too long,
delicatezza
it often happened that she accelerated the
e mi
rhythm
rimase vivamente
and got
scolpita
tangled up jumping the words until my father intervened in order to start
prendeva
again.
in quei momenti di preghiera. Tornava a
I then
stare
learned that with God one must speak slowly, with seriousness and delicacy. The position my father took in those moments of prayer was also vividly remembered.
senza guardarci, senza fare un
He returned tired from the work of the fields, and after supper he knelt on the ground, rested his elbows on a chair, with his head in his hands, without looking at us, without making a movement or giving the slightest sign of
governa la
impatience.
casa, che guida i buoi.
And I thought, my father who is so strong, who governs the house, who leads the oxen, who does not bow down before the mayor, the rich and the wicked. My father before God becomes like a child.
Parlare con lui. Deve essere molto grande.
How he looks and how he starts talking to him.
Ginocchia davanti.
God must be very great if my father kneels before him. But he must also be very good if you can talk to him without changing your clothes.
Relativamente di un bambino. Al contrario,
On the contrary, I never saw my mother
mia
kneeling.
madre inginocchiata
She was too tired in the evening to do it.
la sera per farlo.
She sat among us, holding the smallest in her arms.
Piccolo, recitava
She also recited
dal principio
the
alla
prayers from the beginning to the end,
un attimo di
and
guardare,
didn't stop for a moment
soffermandosi più a lungo lo
while
sguardo,
to look at us, one after the other,
fiatava nemmeno se i piccoli la molestavano.
lingering for a little longer on the little ones.
Tempesta sulla casa
She
o
didn't even bother if the little ones harassed her, or even if the storm raged on the house, or the cat combined some silliness. And I thought, God must be very simple. If we can talk to him holding a baby in his arms and wearing an apron. And he must also be a very important person if my mother does not mind the cat or the storm when he talks to him.
le mani di mio padre, le labbra
My father's hands and my mother's lips taught me more important things about God.
su Dio. Non è un trattato di teologia, no? È un semplice racconto di liturgia familiare.
You have heard this already before, it's very simple.
Però è uno dei più belli. Allora,
We must begin to take care of the family liturgy,
familiare,
and you will see that things to be treated are not very strange. They are attitudes,
modi di
ways of
fare,
doing things,
concentrazione,
concentration, delicacy,
delicatezza,
becoming aware of who you are talking
stai
to,
parlando, che cosa stai
to
facendo.
what you are doing.
Certo, si può dire un'Ave Maria prima di mangiare così, tanto perché magari, capite, o si
You
può
can
dire
say a Hail
che-
Mary before eating in some way, or it can be said with a sense of sweetness, of tenderness, of thanksgiving, and meanwhile of offering, as we say at times of this blessing.
Diciamo a volte nelle benedizioni, quando
Lord,
diciamo,
bless what is given to us and also those who do not have
chi
it.
non ne ha, ti benedici quello che ti ci è dato e dalle anche a chi non l'ha. Cioè, vedete, si può fare tante cose in una liturgia familiare.
My next point.
Secondo punto, ma lo passa adesso in ordine. Teresa racconta
Teresa recounts her first theological
un
problem.
problemino teologico che ebbe. Per una bambina di nemmeno 10 anni, il problemino era importante.
She had heard that in heaven
Aveva sentito dire che in cielo
there's a diversity of glory.
c'è una
The great
diversità
saints,
di gloria, i grandi
the
santi,
saints,
i santi
the Madonna,
così, la Madonna, poi
common
ci sono
people,
la gente comune, Io ricordo la mia povera mamma che mi diceva certe volte: speriamo di riuscire a entrare in paradiso almeno un posticino dietro la porta. Cioè, non sognava grandi cose, sognava semplicemente di poter entrare in paradiso. Allora,
And so Therese was thinking of this problem
come fanno
and wondered how the blessed could be happy if there were differences of those who had more and of those who were blessed,
chi ha di più, chi ha di meno,
of those who received so much glory and those with less.
tanti onori, e chi invece lì, poverino, è entrato a malapena. E ricordate
Those who have many honors and those who do not.
che fa? La sorella ascolta questa domanda della bambina, non le dice.
Her sister listens to the child's story and does not tell her, "Be quiet, stupid," but takes the father's cup and thimble that Therese used for embroidery. She fills them with water, and then she says to the girl, "Which is fuller?" And the girl replies that they are both full. See, then we will all be happy because we're all as full as far as we can be filled.
Dove possiamo essere riempiti? Guardate che è una domanda incredibilmente bella.
I will make for you an application.
Un'applicazione, e ve la faccio perché invece quest'altra domanda, sempre sull'aldilà, l'ho sentita fare molte volte.
In the Gospel it is written
Nel Vangelo c'è scritto
that in paradise
che in paradiso non ci si sposa,
one does not get married, one takes neither wife nor husband.
marito. Quanta gente mi ha chiesto nel corso degli anni:
How many people have asked me over the years,
ci vorremmo ancora bene?
will we still be husband and wife? Will we still love each other? Will the parent-child relationship still be that? Will friends still be friends, or will everything be the same?
Sarei curioso di sapere cosa rispondereste a un ragazzo che vi fa questa domanda.
The answer is this.
E la risposta è molto bella. La risposta è questa:
We will be equal
che
in our
saremo uguali
affections.
negli affetti,
If by equal we mean
se per uguali intendiamo
that we will lack nothing,
che non ci mancherà niente. Capite?
and yet
In questo senso.
no one will lack anything.
Nessuno mancherà niente, non può dire mi manca il non aver avuto la moglie, mi manca il non avere non ci mancherà niente.
And yet
E tuttavia ognuno
everyone
sarà
will be filled
riempito
with all the good he has
tutto il
known.
bene che ha conosciuto. Capite la differenza?
Man, when he wants
Si
equality,
fossero uguali. L'uomo quando desidera l'uguaglianza
wishes not to be deprived of
sia
anything,
privato
of
di
anything he cares
qualcosa che
about.
gli sta a cuore. Ma
The equality sum, however,
insomma è che ognuno
means that
sarà
everyone will be filled with all the good that the heart has known, lived, embraced.
di tutto il bene che il suo cuore ha conosciuto, ha vissuto, ha abbracciato.
Of course, your wife will be your
Certo,
wife.
tua moglie sarà
Your
tua
husband will be your husband.
e tuo marito
Your
sarà
children
tuo
will be
marito,
your
i tuoi
children.
figli saranno i tuoi figli, i tuoi
Your
amici
friends will be
saranno
your friends,
i tuoi
and they will be
amici.
1,000 times more, and not in the sense that you will miss them, but in the sense that they will fill you up.
Nel senso che ti riempiranno. Che la
What you have experienced beautifully will be part of your fullness.
di buono farà parte della tua pienezza.
So also Teresa understands that everyone will be happy because everyone will have everything they
Perché
need.
tutti avranno tutto ciò di cui hanno bisogno.
And then Teresa
Teresa
recounts,
racconta,
given that she was
dato che faceva
homeschooled,
scuola a casa,
that at the end of the school year she had to take exams.
allora si usava la scuola familiare, c'era gli esami. Ma
She
racconta
speaks
gli
of the
esami
exams like a party, a sort of judgment.
una specie di giudizio,
She compares it to the
credo
universal
paragonare al
judgment.
giudizio universale, dove c'era
And Dad and Mom were sitting in a solemnly decorated armchair.
piccola piccola perché c'era ancora viva la mamma, c'era papà e mamma seduti proprio su una poltrona solennemente addobbata.
Next to them were the prizes,
Accanto erano preparati i
even the
premi,
wreaths, the gifts.
con dei fiori,
The sisters told her how the school year had
le
gone.
raccontavano come era andato l'anno scolastico, facevano anche un discorsetto, le bambine, lei, la
She and her sister were holding their breath because it was still an exam.
sospeso perché era sempre un esame e alla fine
Eventually, it became a party.
diventava una festa.
And she said, "This made me
Cioè,
dream."
mi faceva sognare il giudizio universale. Sembra una stupidaggine, ma
Once,
una volta
Saint Catherine
Santa Caterina
found herself in a
trovò una
church
chiesa dove
where they spoke at the Last
parlavano del
Judgment.
giudizio universale.
And the preacher, as they
il
used to
predicatore,
us,
come si usava una volta, andava giù di
terrorized
montone
those present.
e terrorizzava i presenti, come si usava a fare.
Only St. Catherine was
C'era
smiling
solo lei
peacefully
che
and blessed.
sorrideva pacifica e beata.
And someone asked her,
Allora gli chiese, dice, ma scusa,
"Excuse me, everyone is scared here and you smile."
e tu sorridi?
"Sure, I smile,
Certo, dice che sorrido, perché
because
io
I know that a person who loves me
giudicarmi sarà una
and to
persona
whom I
che
love
mi
very
vuol
much
bene
will
e a cui
judge
io
me."
voglio molto bene. Capite? Allora la domanda, per esempio, che si potrebbe fare è questa.
So think of your school exam.
Dico un esame scolastico, per esempio anche all'università, facciamo le applicazioni.
If a person who loves you
Farti l'esame
would make the exam,
fosse una persona che ti vuol bene,
would you be more worried or less
saresti
worried?
più preoccupato o meno preoccupato?
If you are less worried,
se sei meno preoccupato,
it means that you are a
vuol dire che sei
profiteer
un
of the good.
approfittatore del bene.
If you are
Se
even
sei
more worried,
ancora più preoccupato, vuol
it
dire
means that
che
the good is the force that
bene
makes
è
you
la
live.
forza che ti fa vivere.
Do you understand the difference?
Capite la differenza? Guardate che non
These
sto
are not
dicendo
subtleties.
sciocchezzuole, sottigliezze.
In the end, in everything, there is always a theology of what love is.
C'è sempre una teologia di cos'è l'amore. Di cos'è l'amore.
If you are judged by someone who loves you,
È una persona che ti vuole bene. La questione è molto
the matter is
seria.
very serious. It is very serious. How serious is the love I owe?
E forse proprio perché
Perhaps
la
right,
questione del
precisely because the question of the exam is very serious, there is an advance, a way in which I prepare myself for what I must do.
quello che devo fare. Andiamo ancora avanti.
So moving forward,
A un certo punto Teresa parla
at one point Therese talks about her father
e dice che
and says that her father often spoke with her and also spoke of political and social problems of the time.
così problemi sociali, problemi politici, problemi del tempo.
She says,
E dice io pensavo
how good France would be if it were governed by you, Father.
governarla fosse il papà. Certo, ragionamenti da bambino. E poi diceva, questo lo dirà un po' più tardi,
She would say, it seems to me impossible to find someone holier than you on earth.
qualcuno più santo di te. Questi i giudizi che dà.
Then she also adds
Si aggiungono.
how she watched him pray, what did her father do.
Papà faceva in chiesa, quelli li leggete.
You can read it.
Però anche qui c'è un problema
But now we have a problem. What did Freud say?
di cui siamo tutti infumarati in questa interpretazione. Diceva
He said,
che l'idea di Dio
the idea of God is born when the child can no longer attribute to their father certain virtues or certain abilities
certe capacità
that they believed that their father had. Oh, when they cannot find answers in nature.
risposte in natura e beh, allora le proietta. E l'idea di Dio nasce così.
But a question for
E
you.
se la
What if the
fosse
question was exactly the
esattamente il
opposite?
contrario? E se
If the idea of God was born
quando
when someone, even in everyday simplicity and attachment,
nell'attaccamento
and the fact that he takes you in his arms, cuddles you, looks into your eyes,
guarda negli occhi, ti
talks to you with such wisdom, kindness, and tenderness,
parla con una tale
becomes for you as divine every day?
bontà, tenerezza, che per te è il divino a misura di tutti i giorni. Il divino a misura di tutti i giorni.
And then in church they will say to you,
E ti diranno,
you must say, Our Father.
Padre nostro. Ma sapete quante persone soffrono senza nemmeno saperlo del fatto che la parola Padre nostro, che poi per Dio, paternità, maternità sono la stessa cosa, perché qualcuno appena sente
Many
la parola
suffer
Padre
because when they hear the word Father,
immediatamente reagire con
Many
un ricordo,
have
ne so qualcosa.
many have had a hard experience with their father.
Raccontato ancora l'esperienza che io ho avuto
I
con
have
mio
told
papà,
you
stata
about my
abbastanza
father and the hard experience I lived with him.
militare. Se è vero, però sulle
He was
questioni
strict.
essenziali
But on essential questions, I understood that he was acting in relationship with God.
agiva in rapporto con Dio. Capite? Che non
He was
faceva
not
Dio
being
della
God of the
situazione.
situation.
Non so se è chiaro. Quella volta lì che io ti parlavo della mia vocazione,
When I told him about my vocation, he looked at me steadily and said to me,
mi guardò
"You have to do what God wants and not what I want."
io, non quello che voglio io.
It's a small thing.
Una piccola cosa, capite? Pensate se mio padre mi avesse detto farlo stupido, perché io gli parlavo della mia voglia di diventare prete, avevo neanche 7-8 anni. Va bene? Intendo dire, quando noi diciamo padre e poi viene il Papa che ti dice Dio è anche madre, è bellissimo.
Where are
Dove sono
the fathers and mothers
le mamme
who
che
treat
trattano
children?
i bambini, gli parlano,
Do they act, scold, forgive,
oppure perdonano?
indicate knowing that they are playing the image of God with those children?
Che ti stai giocando con questo bimbo l'immagine di Dio. Io ho raccontato ancora una volta che
If the child could see their father and mother going to confess,
proprio non per caso, ma perché lo si fa, papà e mamma che vanno
how
a
father and
confessare.
mother going to confess, how they become the little child before God.
Un bambino piccolo davanti al prete, evidentemente, però poi vede che anche il papà va a fare il bambino piccolo davanti a Dio.
What would happen to see them
Le sue
when they see them?
le sue storie o le sue cose. Che cosa
They could say how small my father is before God and how great he is before me. What if they understand that the two are exactly the same? Before God, the smallness of the Father is the adultness that they must realize.
Capisce che le due cose sono esattamente le stesse cose, perché quella piccolezza del papà davanti a Dio è la grandezza che lui deve realizzare. Cioè, ripeto, non dico
I'm
questo
not saying
per
this to make you
farti
feel
colpa,
guilty.
e ripeto sempre la stessa cosa. Quando nella vita ci accade, ve l'ho raccontato ancora, però mi piace raccontarvelo perché per me è stato importante.
I will tell you something I've already told you.
Provato a fare una
Once I found myself a Cognoli di Trento to give a lecture on the family,
sulla famiglia,
and I talked about the relationship between husband and wife.
allora ero anche molto così,
In the end,
alla fine dibattito.
during the debate, an old woman told
La
me,
mano viene fuori tutta tremante, vecchia proprio.
"Father,
Dice padre, per lei queste cose.
you tell me these things now that my husband is dead and I can't do anything anymore."
Cioè, capite? Voi sapete che quando
So you know that when one has not managed to live something true in the relationship with God, if he truly stands before him and says,
vero del rapporto con Dio, se veramente sta davanti
"Lord,
a Dio e dice
forgive
Signore,
me."
che bello, perdonami, aiutami. Il Signore
The Lord
può
can recover
recuperare
everything.
Quella frase dei salmi che cosa
Because,
dice?
as the Psalms say,
Davanti a Dio. Un
before
giorno-
God
Dai, continuate.
is a day like 1,000 years.
Dio può recuperare
God can recover in one day what you did not understand in your whole life and arrive in heaven saying,
e arrivare
"What a joy to have understood."
che gioia aver capito magari l'ultima mezz'ora se non è
And maybe in the last half hour if you didn't have time before.
è una grande cosa. Dio
We must never stand before God in frustration,
con sensi di frustrazione.
because it always comes from what we have not been able to do or that others have not been able to teach
Fare
us.
che gli altri non sono stati capaci di insegnarci, va bene? Ma lui, per il Signore,
For the Lord, a moment is enough when one is before Him with total truth and with total desire that He can recover everything.
recuperare tutto. Può
God can reprogram the computer of your life in a
in
second.
un secondo. Scusate l'espressione tecnica, ma ormai è quello che i ragazzi capiscono più facilmente. Quindi, papà. Poi, l'altro legame.
And then there is another connection to face, that between the Eucharist and charity. You remember Therese had always been used to giving alms to the poor whom she met on the street.
Toccava a lei, da piccola, dare l'elemosina ai poveri che si incontrava nelle strade. Va bene? E questo accadeva.
This was easier to do on Sundays when they went to church.
Chiesa.
There was that time Teresa has money in her hand. She sees a man who walks by, a poor crippled man. She runs towards him and affectionately puts the money in his hands. But the man was not poor, he was just a cripple. And he nods no to her. The child does not understand. She goes back to her father, who has bought her a sweet in the meantime. Teresa thinks of bringing him that, but fears a new refusal. She says, I heard my sister say that on the day of the First Communion, you get everything you want. Do you believe that? Has anyone said that to someone who's having the First Communion? Jesus can understand the secret connection between what he asked for and what his heart desires. Teresa thought, if I don't know how to give something to this poor man, I will pray for him on the day of my First Communion, the day when you get everything. May the Lord fill him with grace.
Che una bambina dica questo a 6 anni o 4 anni che avesse, fa la prima comunione a 11 anni, 5 anni, e quel giorno si ricorda del suo
Therese will really do it.
e prega per il suo popolo. Guardate che è una cosa immensa. Allora, teologizziamo.
Okay, we theorize for a moment, doing a little theology.
L'Eucaristia
The Eucharist is the supreme act in which I have charity towards all. Because I have come into contact with the Lord, who sacrifices himself to every man.
L'atto eucaristico, faccio la comunione, è il più grande atto di carità che io possa fare sulla terra.
This is the biggest act I can do on earth.
Domanda: a questo atto di carità, che è l'Eucaristia che io ricevo tutte le volte e tutte le volte che la ricevo, dovrebbe però
This act of charity, the Eucharist I receive all the time, should correspond to a sort of incarnation on my part.
atto di carità a cui mi affeziono e che
I should tie some act of charity to it, to which I love and consider it normal for someone who does communion. Question for you. What act of charity do you do normally take as the flow of the received Eucharist? Acts of charity made in some way leave the time they find. We need things that are fixed in our mind and in our hearts.
Non l'ho mai
And then
fatto.
people say, I've never done it. And I say, do it. On Christmas night, Paul VI spoke to the children and said to them, Jesus came poor because he loves us. Have you done any good to someone these days to prepare for Christmas? Have you been kind to someone? And the children looked at him. He continued like this for a while. Then he said, if you didn't, let's do it now. The Lord can recover everything. It is the same logic of love. When you speak of love, you can never say failed task. Because even in the last breath you are given to love can be great before God. And then there's the last episode, the last liturgy, and it is the saddest because of the family of St. Teresa had a tragedy that few families have to endure. Theresa had a psychological nervous illness, and they feared that she had gone crazy. As she said, I looked like an idiot. She says that one Easter evening, her father and sisters went to Paris to attend a ceremony. She was alone at home with her uncle. Thinking he would make her happy, he took her on his knees and began to talk to her about her mother, who was dead. But she had a nervous crisis and for 50 days continued to say, Mom, Mom. And she was seeing monsters and they didn't know what to do anymore. They were convinced that she was lost. The child, however, was still able to see two things. To see the sisters who prayed for her in front of the statue of the Madonna of the Smile, and also she would see her mother and father who were crying. Let's say a Mass at the shrine of St. Maria della Vittoria. Suddenly, Theresa sees the Madonna who smiles and heals instantly. Theresa says, seeing me so loved, even when I became so idiotic, I drew love in heaven. I drew the conclusion that if I was so loved on earth, I had to be loved even in heaven. This love in heaven becomes the fact that from the moment Theresa will call the Holy Virgin Mom.
Però la storia non è finita, perché in tutto il clima familiare, per tanti motivi, forse anche per errori educativi, non è detto, c'era il fatto che Teresa si accorgeva che, come diceva la gente, questa bambina era un po'
But
fragile.
even maybe for mistakes they made in the family, Theresa realized she was a bit fragile. She was frightened of everything. She was insecure.
Avevo ormai quasi 14 anni, 13
I was 13, I was still in childhood.
cioè era troppo protetta.
That was too protected.
Troppo protetta, quindi non poteva affrontare la vita così.
She could not face life wrapped in all the conceivable care.
E lì anche lei racconta la prima guarigione avviene con la Madonna.
Theresa recounts that the first recovery occurs with the Madonna, with her mother, and the second happens with the child.
Un bambino fragile.
On Christmas Day, fragile child,
La Chiesa le ha detto quel bambino è forte. E allora
it is the child Jesus, and in church they told her she is strong.
la notte di Natale per guarire.
Chose Christmas night to heal me.
Episodio che questo può far sorridere, però bisogna starci attenta. Dice che tutti gli anni
Theresa says that every year she was surprised,
le sorprese, sapete, come noi abbiamo i pacchi, lei
but
aveva
that
la
Christmas,
scarpa messa nel camino e tutte le volte cosa c'è? Tutta una scena.
the father, who had always been sweet with her, says
Papà, che era sempre stato dolcissimo.
he had always been sweet.
E
And he
dice,
said,
basta.
enough,
È ora di
it is time to finish it.
Per Teresa questa era peggio che se l'avessero presa a schiaffi. E
And Theresa suddenly realizes that she is once again the adult, or for the first time she is an adult.
per la prima volta fa la persona adulta e gestisce tutta la vicenda.
She manages the whole affair in order to make everyone happy and happy.
Non ero più una bambina,
I was no longer a child.
ho ricevuto la forza del bambino di Betlemme,
I had received the strength of the child of Bethlehem,
diventando così.
which for us become humble and good.
E da quel momento in
From
poi
that moment on,
non sono più stata vinta
I was no longer won by anyone.
da combattente. Cosa significa?
What do these things mean?
Significano tutte la stessa
They all mean the same truth,
che La famiglia non è quella ottima, buona, dove tutto va bene.
The family is not that which is good, perfect, where everything is fine.
Quella di Therese era normale in un
But it is a
certo
normal
modo.
family where there are also misunderstandings and hardships.
Nelle normalità ci sono anche i difetti, ci sono anche i problemi, ci sono anche le nostre incomprensioni. Ma io credo
However,
comunque,
I should still believe
che comunque quel cerchio
that the family is a circle that God has chosen for me to experience
è
love.
il cerchio che Dio ha scelto perché io sperimenti l'amore.
If I don't experiment it there, I will certainly live in the cold.
E allora la prima responsabilità, fare e sperimentare l'amore.
The first responsibility then is to experience love.
Perfino quell'amore lì può essere troppo poco o essere
The second responsibility is that even that love can be too little or counterproductive, and then people need to realize that the family environment has been destined for you to love,
perfino quello può
but it must continually measure itself with a greater love.
Allora bisogna che le persone, non dico solo i ragazzi, si accorgano che quell'ambiente lì è l'ambiente che ti è stato destinato per amare, adesso la tua famiglia, poi quella che farai, ma deve continuamente misurarsi come un bambino con un amore più grande, capite? È sempre segno di un amore più grande.
Every love is always a sign of a greater love.
È piccolo, il grande
If the love that is given to you in the environment is small, the great means that you are not afraid.
significa
And if it is big, it means that the Lord has simply wanted to equip you immediately.
pensarti subito, ma a qualcosa che darà comunque a tutti
Even if it is something that will give everyone away, because God treats every one of us as if they were
all'inizio del
unique in the world.
tratta ciascuno di noi come se fosse unico al mondo. Non vuol dire con gli stessi metodi.
It does not mean by the same methods and the same roads.
Un gioco è tutto
But
una
in the
catena
end,
di
when we
verità.
will see
Tutto
Jesus,
quello che questo vuol dire, ma alla fine,
at the moment
quando noi vedremo
of our death,
Gesù, al momento della nostra morte, gli diremo
we will say to him,
che per te sono unico,
"Now I understand that for you I am unique,
per le braccia.
by the way in which we tend our